Okay, up next, we have Karen DeLener and Sven Hammond, and we're going to go ahead and play a video predicting the performance of standard implants across population using the virtual patient cohorts, as Jan discussed a little earlier.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction and of course for the opportunity to present. My name is Karen DeLener, Market Manager at Materialise Medical. I'm mainly focusing on cardiovascular applications, but today I will also share some examples from other medical fields. I'm very honored to be talking today together with Sven Herman about predicting the performance of standard implants across populations by using virtual patient cohorts. I will first talk about how these virtual patient cohorts can be established using population studies and how crucial this is for medical device design. In the second part of this presentation, Sven will take it over and talk about how you can then perform simulations on those virtual patient cohorts. Let's start with the beginning. Why are we even interested in virtual patients? So if you're joining this conference, then you know from firsthand that it's challenging to design a device that will work equally well and safe for everyone. Patients come in all shapes and sizes, but medical devices usually come in a limited number of sizes that need to fit all patients on the bell curve. A crucial aspect of that variability is the anatomy of each and every one of those individual patients. We see that a good understanding of the target anatomy and how it varies across the population can be helpful for many aspects of device design. A thorough understanding of the anatomy can lead to safer and better performing devices. It can improve the usability for physicians. If you understand the anatomical variability, you can optimize logistics. And last but not least, obviously, better characterization of the anatomy can speed up regulatory approval. To get to those virtual patients cohorts, we're starting from multiple physical patients. Those multiple physical patients are scanned, leading to multiple medical images, and ultimately leading to multiple 3D models. With a method that we call statistical shape modeling. All these patients can then be combined into a general shape. You can vary then the modes of variation to get the average patient, but you can also create worst case scenarios. The benefit now is that we're not only limited to the patients that we have medical images of, but that we can also interpolate in between them. What we created is a virtual patient cohort, a quantification of the shape of a certain patient population. This can be used to create multiple scenarios, from average to worst case, and those can be used for 3D analysis, virtual implantation, benchtop testing, simulation, and so on. Let's take a closer look at the workflow of a population study. I'm showing here now a femur example, and for simplicity, we just shown 5 femurs. The study was, of course, performed with more patients. So first of all, from the medical images, we're creating the 3D representations of those patients. And you see here the 5 femurs that I just talked about. And in a second step, we then create, with the use of statistical shape modeling, an average femur. On the images, you also see that there is a separate 3D model for the cortical and trabecular bone. The resulting statistical shape model does not only give you the average femur, but you can also play around with the modes of variation to visualize and quantify the shape variation. So I will show you a tool to interpret these results. And you will see that the first mode contains the most variation. Changing this mode changes multiple characteristics of the femur. A more comprehensive way to look at it is by changing specific measurements. So now on this example, you just see 2 measurements for simplicity, but you can add as many as you want. And then you see that changing one of these measurements will also change the other measurements, but also the modes of variation because they're correlated. Another thing that you can do is lock a specific measurement. For example, if you want to look at a specific size of your device, you can look at the corresponding measurement, you can lock it, and then analyze how the rest of the shape varies while this measurement stays the same. Over the past 10 to 15 years, a lot of medical device companies have incorporated the use of virtual patients as a standard tool for their R&D. And this is because of 2 main reasons. First of all, because having a realistic design input reduces the risk of device failure at later stages of the development cycle, hence reducing the total cost of bringing a medical device to the market. And secondly, because population analysis in the end gets you to a faster commercial launch. I will quickly go over a few of the many examples of the benefits of virtual patients. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into depth in each and every one of them. But you will see a link for each and every example, and you can also always contact me afterwards if you want to have more information. So the first example is DJO, and initially they did not use virtual patients for their taper-fill hip system, and that unfortunately led to a failed initial market launch. So they had lots of surgeons stopped using the product. They had to throw away $500,000 worth of inventory. And then of course they wanted to investigate the issue and do a redesign. And for that they did use virtual patients. And this led to a successful relaunch of their taper-fill hip system. A second example comes from a completely different field. So with Abbott Structural Heart, what they did was a study on the right heart anatomy, and the results that are presented in the corresponding paper show that a synthetic virtual patients obtained from a statistical shape model are more generalized representations of the entire population than individual virtual patients. Then a third example shows Exactech and how they used the SSM technology to determine the optimal implant design philosophy for total knee replacement. And this led to a cost-effective population-driven device design for them. And then finally, the last example, again from the cardiovascular field. So with Venus Medtech, this is China's leading transcatheter heart valve company, and they incorporated the use of statistical shape models in-house. That enabled them to map out the average but also the worst case scenarios. It reinforced them to convince regulatory bodies, and it also helps them to accelerate medical device design. So in summary, virtual patients can be beneficial at different stages of the product life cycle. In the beginning of R&D, it can be used to quantify your target target population and the anatomy and have relevant design input. And then after device development, virtual patients can be used to verify your prototype, quickly pinpoint needed design iterations, and move forward to animal and human trials with confidence in your device. These tests can be done virtual, so you can do virtual implantation or simulation, but you could also do physical testing with, for example, a 3D printed benchtop model. With that, I'm completing my part and I'm passing the word to Sven Herman for the second part of this presentation about virtual patient cohorts. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Karen. I will now carry on with taking a look on virtual patient cohorts from the simulation perspective. This means when we have virtual patients derived from a statistical shape model as possible input data, what can we do with them using simulation techniques? Let me start by showing you briefly why it is beneficial to combine these two worlds. As we know from the FDA and the MDIC, there are 4 types of methods used as sources of evidence in the medical device industry, with human subjects and computer modeling and simulation being amongst them. When we compare those two, we see that computer simulations come along with a lot of advantages when representing certain aspects of device performance. There are several fields where computer simulations even outmatch human subjects, such as predictions beyond the indications of use, adoption for patient-specific properties, or variation of parameters like implant selection and positioning within one subject. At the end, those are the crucial areas besides cost and time where computer simulation has the potential to support and augment preclinical studies or even clinical trials. So there's the question how computer simulation studies can actually do that. And the answer is quite simple: by taking geometries that represent virtual patients as input data for the simulation. I would like now to show you how the workflow of such an analysis looks like. So based on the statistical shape model, you first select the population as well, the desired cohort size you want to investigate. Then you select the implant you want to consider for the analysis. Its geometry is then virtually implanted into the standard model of the selected population, and a virtual patient cohort is then generated in the desired cohort size for specified load cases, such that all virtual patients are treated with the same selected implant. Based on these specific or specified computation models for each patient, the simulation is then conducted, and its results or the result of the simulation can then finally be evaluated and documented into a report. The combination of statistical shape models with physics-based simulation, as I just showed you, can address several key questions that are related to the device performance in the human body. The most obvious one is to actually demonstrate the device performance in patients with all the benefits that simulation provides. Based on that, you can create digital evidence for preclinical studies or even augment clinical studies with objective data, as I mentioned earlier. You can also conduct comparative studies where you compare your device with a predicate product or gold standard, which can then be used for responding regulatory requests or post-market surveillance purposes. Or you can simply demonstrate why you can expand the product range and indications of your device, and so on. So to summarize, you see there's a huge potential that lies in the combination of virtual patient cohorts and simulation techniques. This is something big players like Zimmer Biomet have already discovered and have actually started to use it within clinical trials. In this context, they still see some technical barriers for this technique to be established for broader use by medical device manufacturers, but these technical barriers are things that we as simulation experts resolve and overcome for them. That is why you can benefit from our joint expertise in generating virtual patients from any populations you want to investigate, customizing a multifunctional simulation platform to the application you need, and finally automizing significantly large numbers of virtual patient models for faster scaling. I hope we gave you some insights into virtual patient cohorts and their use for predicting medical device performance across populations. And I would like to thank you very much for your attention.